Hi, it's Steph, and we're at the Home Depot, and fall has arrived. There are perennials and ornamental grasses and lots of colorful fall annuals. So let's go ahead and take a look at the September inventory at the Home Depot. If you're looking for color in your garden late in the season, you have some great options. And one that is a pollinator magnet is Caryopteris. And look at these beautiful purple blooms. There are already bees buzzing all around it. And I actually just ordered myself the Beyond Midnight Caryopteris by Proven Winners. And fun fact, if you didn't know, you can order plants, shrubs mostly is what I order, on HomeDepot.com, and it is free shipping. And they've always arrived looking beautiful for me. I shared this in a video where I planted a hedge of the Firelight Tidbit hydrangeas, and they're absolutely gorgeous, especially this time of year when they start to get pink. They're a panicle type hydrangea, but I am really excited to get my Caryopteris in the mail soon and to plant it out in my garden. But here is some information on Caryopteris, which is also called bluebeard, and it is a perennial. This one here is $9.98 in the Home Depot house brand containers, but their #1 perennials are actually on sale here at my store on a special buy, 2 for $15. So they would be about $7.50 a piece. They are drought tolerant. These are very similar to something like a Russian sage, where they like a very dry, well-draining soil and in full sun. They are deer resistant. They bloom late summer through fall, and this variety gets to be 18 to 36 inches in height, 24 to 36 inches in width, and they're hardy down to -10 degrees Fahrenheit. But really pretty late season color. And if you are a fan of ground covers, I certainly am, here is a great one for late season interest. This is plumbago. And not only does it get these really pretty little blue flowers on the tips of the plant, but the foliage will turn burgundy the closer we get to fall and as the temperatures begin to cool. So this is a really great seasonal ground cover. Now, I love ground covers because they spread to cover the ground, which means over time you'll have to mulch less, and they also help retain moisture. So they are a win-win. And you can get perennial ground covers like these that will die back in the winter and reemerge in spring, or you can get evergreen ground covers, which will all serve a similar purpose. And so this one here is deer resistant and drought tolerant. It is low growing. It likes part sun. I have mine planted underneath some very mature oak trees, and they seem to do fine in that dry shade environment. And they bloom early summer through fall. They get to be 6 to 8 inches in height and need 18-inch spacing, hardy down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. And these are also part of the 2 for $15 sale here at my Home Depot. And blanket flower, also known as gaillardia. These are another prolific bloomer as we head into the later part of summer. And even when they're done blooming, I feel like their bloom heads are really pretty, the spent blooms. You can see as the petals fall off, you end up with this round bloom head, which offers even another level of interest. The foliage is really pretty. It's a clumping type foliage. Some of them have more of a blue-green hint to them. They are generally a low-growing plant. So this one here says that it is drought tolerant, easy to grow, has a mounded growth habit. I will say that one that I had years ago spread quite a bit. So a drop seed, if you want something that spreads around, this might be a good option. So they get to be 8 to 10 inches in height and 15 to 18 inches in width, hardy down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I am also a big fan of using perennials in your seasonal containers, because when you're done using them there, you can plant them out in the garden. So right now, as we head into fall, if your annuals from summer are looking tired, it would be a great idea to pop in a couple of seasonally appropriate things with fall colors like this blanket flower into your containers, and use the perennials in there for a little while, and then you can plant them out in your landscape. This one here is still all budded up and will get to bloom for you in your garden. And look, some ajuga. This, also known as bugleweed, is another really great ground cover. This one is called Bronze Beauty. I have about 2 varieties, maybe 3 varieties. I have the chocolate chip, the burgundy glow, and the black scallop in my garden. I love them. They do spread quite a bit, which in my case is wonderful because it's covering a lot of ground. And look how large and shiny these leaves are. And the best part is in the spring, you get these really vibrant blue spike type flowers that They're about 6 to 8 inches in height. So a really great ground cover perennial. So this one here, let's see the specs on it. It blooms mid to late spring, plant in sun or part shade. Mine are all in part shade. And it adapts well to dry or moist conditions and grows 6 inches in height and needs 12-inch spacing. But because it is a ground cover, it will continue to put out runners and spread horizontally. And this one is hardy in zones 3 through 8. Another great late summer bloomer that will carry you into fall is Agastache. Now this variety here, you can see that even after all of the bloom petals are gone, the calyxes of the plant will still look purple, which will still offer a lot of color. It is a spike type bloom and it has a minty fragrance, which is really pleasant. It also means that deer and rabbits stay away from it because they don't like the smell. Humans like it, but those animals don't, which is a bonus because then they won't touch our plants. The pollinators absolutely love them. You can see a little bee in there trying to get what's left of those petals. And this variety is the Anise hyssop Beelicious. It's a perennial Agastache. It is deer resistant, drought tolerant. It says it has a mounding habit. It actually has more of a spike growth habit, an upright habit. It blooms early to late summer. It gets to be 14 to 16 inches in height and needs 12-inch spacing, hardy down to -10 degrees Fahrenheit. And these pair beautifully with late season perennials like Rudbeckia. I absolutely love the golden color of the Rudbeckia with this spike type purple bloom. Looks gorgeous. I grow the Blue Fortune variety, which is a little bit lighter purple. This one here is very similar to something like the Blue Boa. And this plant here, you might be looking at it thinking, Steph, why am I going to put this ragweed from the side of the highway in my garden? Well, this is actually Solidago, which looks very similar to the weedy goldenrod. However, it is a perennial and it offers a lot of late season color. These are also generally more well behaved than the weed that you see on the side of the highway. And this golden color lends itself to pairing very well with other late season perennials like aster. In fact, there's one right beside it, and you can see that aster is going to be a pinkish purple bloom with a yellow center, which would pair really nicely with this Solidago. So here is the information on it. It's called Goldenrod Sweetie. It's a Solidago hybrid. It attracts butterflies. It's very low maintenance and has an upright growth habit. And it likes full sun, and it blooms early to late summer. Gets to be 12 to 14 inches in height and needs 12 to 18-inch spacing. Hardy down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. And it does have a really pretty bright golden color. This would also look really pretty paired with things like purple asters. You could even use these in a container. This would make a great container plant. And given that they are 2 for $15, it'd be $7.50, and it might even come back for you next season. In fact, I used some asters, the purple variety on that side that I'll show you in a minute, in some containers last fall. They came back, I planted them out in the landscape, and they are all budded up and getting ready to bloom. So this aster also has a ton of blooms, buds on it. It only now just started to open up. And I really love the use of perennials in containers, as I mentioned before. So this is another great candidate, some aster. So this one is called New York Aster Hazy. It's a type of Aster Nova Belgi, and it is perennial, attracts butterflies, deer resistant, and a mounded growth habit. They do like full sun. And this variety gets to be, it's a mid-size height, 24 to 36 inches in height and 18 to 24 inches in width. So technically you would only need one of these in a container, and then you can add something like an ornamental grass and just seed them. And I think that would be a really pretty combination. Hardy down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. And here is the aster that I purchased last year to use in my containers. You can see as the bloom continues to open, there is a dainty yellow center that picks up really nicely on this Solidago that is right behind it. Very pretty combination with purple and yellow. There are tons of buds on this aster, so it's going to look like a purple puff of blooms when it is all opened up. So this here is the Aster Dragon aster. It likes full sun. It is deer resistant and attracts butterflies. Grows in a clumping habit. And it gets to be 24 to 36 inches in height and 18 to 24 inches in width. Hardy down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. And here is another prolific blooming plant that the pollinators just love. It blooms for a really long time, from early summer all the way through fall. It is verbena. Now, I grow a variety called Verbena bonariensis in my garden, and it usually grows more like a straight stem. And if you pinch it, meaning that you cut where there is two other leaves, it will then start pushing out side shoots and you'll get a bushier plant. It gets pretty tall, somewhere between 4 and 5 feet tall, and because it self-seeds between my other perennials, it sort of just floats above them and moves gently in the breeze, and the pollinators just love them, and I really enjoy them as well. This variety looks like it's a more well-branched variety, so either it's been bred to grow this way or it's been pinched heavily at the nursery where they were grown. But look at all the branching on this. And what that means is with more stems, you will get more blooms. Now, this variety is called Buenos Aires. There it is. It says that it is a tender perennial, and what that means is that it will only survive a mild winter in the zones listed. So for example, this one is listed as hardy in zones 7 through 11. I garden in a zone 6B, 7A. If I have a really cold winter and I plant this in my garden, chances are it will not return next spring. So that is what a tender perennial means. So it might only last a season or two depending how cold your winter is, especially if you're at the lower end of this range here. Blooms early summer through fall, plant in full sun, and prefers a well-drained soil. It does like a very well-draining soil, and this variety grows 4 to 6 feet in height and needs 24 to 30 inch spacing. But it is a really fun and pretty plant to grow in the garden. At this scene here, you have some pumpkins, some ornamental grasses, and some beautiful cone flowers in orange. Now, if you've been around my channel for a little while, you know that I love cone flowers. And I have several varieties in my garden, and they bloom for me from about mid-July all the way through the fall. Usually, depending on the variety, they will have a little bit of a lull. You can deadhead them, and then you'll get some sporadic reblooming. But they are a flower that provides interest for a really long time, because even when the blooms are spent and the leaves or the petals start to age, you still have this really large cone that provides visual interest, and the birds, specifically the yellow finches, love to snack on these seeds. So really pretty perennial for the garden. They do like a very well-draining soil. If you have them in soil that stays too moist, they can rot at the crown and you will lose your plant. And so give them full sun, well-draining soil, and they'll do well for you. Artisan Soft Orange is the color on this one. These are in the Vigoro containers for $9.98. This variety grows 24 to 32 inches in height and needs 30-inch spacing. And there's another variety right beside the orange that is called the Artisan Red Ombre. Look at that. And this one will start a brighter color, like an orangey red, and then it'll fade to this lighter pink coral color. Also very pretty. And if you pair these together with this, what is it called? The Artisan Soft Orange, it makes a really pretty gradient color effect planted together. Ornamental grasses, another wonderful perennial for that late summer and fall garden. It provides a lot of movement and texture and vertical interest. And if you leave them up over the winter, they provide habitat for birds. Now, I absolutely love grasses. They come in all different shapes and sizes. There are some that like shade, like the Hakonakloa or Japanese forest grass. But for the most part, grasses do prefer full sun, and you need to give them lots of sun in order for them to be nice and upright. If they don't get enough sun, they can sometimes splay in the center, lay on the ground, and they won't look as nice. And they do bloom. Now, the blooms on grasses are usually these plumes that they will send up late in the season. This one looks like it gets these burgundy colored plumes. It is a fall bloomer. They are deer resistant, and this is the Japanese silver grass. They like full sun, like I mentioned, and these number 3 containers are $24.98. And they come in different shapes and heights as well. So this one here is 4 to 6 in height, 48-inch spacing, and it has sort of this fountain look to it, also with some burgundy plumes, and they're hardy, very hardy, down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and it blooms early to late fall. Now, they also have some like the Hamlin that are a shorter fountain grass, getting only about 2 feet in height and in width, so you can find something to fit your landscape. And one tip I'll share with you about the maintenance on ornamental grasses is that after about 3 years or so, you might start seeing a hollow in the center, like kind of a bald spot, and that is your hint that it is time to divide it. That is normal. It's part of their growth process. So you would dig it up, divide it in chunks, get rid of that hollow center, and replant the other pieces. And then it'll be good as new. My store has begun to receive some pumpkins. They have some medium-sized pumpkins for $6.98, and they also have some of the smaller sugar pumpkins for $4.48. And if I'm not mistaken, you can use these sugar pumpkins to bake with. So all in all, you can decorate with them for a little while and maybe even bake a pie. But I tend to like to go to one of my local farms to pick some of these up, but if you don't have one accessible near you, the Home Depot is starting to carry their pumpkins for the season. They also have the really large pumpkins, but the price point is also pretty large at $14.98 for their jumbo pumpkins. Keep an eye out at your grocery stores because I know I have a Shaw's near me that will often have sales on their jumbo pumpkins, and they usually land somewhere around $5 or $6. Some decorative mums. These are the 6.5-inch mums for $4.98. And my recommendation when you're buying mums is to make sure that you buy them in tight bud form. That is how you're going to get the longest time out of them. So you can see this one is starting to push a little bit of its color. So it's going to be either an orange or a muted kind of terracotta color, but there are tons of buds on this. So that means that it'll take a little while to open up in your porch display or your garden, and you'll get to enjoy it for a bit longer. The other thing is that they do like moisture. So when you get home, these dry out quite fast. You might want to sit it in a bucket or tray of water to let it rehydrate and sop up the water from the bottom. And then you probably want to water them at least every other day. If you stick your finger in the soil and it feels dry, it's time to rehydrate them. And if you keep them in a covered area, they'll last a bit longer than if they're getting pummeled by rain in case of a rainstorm. I know it would be our temptation to put them out where the rain can get them watered, but that does also kind of take away how long they can thrive. Too much rain can also leave kind of a bald spot in the center depending on how it hits, and can spread fungal disease. Look how pretty those are. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a huge fan of garden mums. I prefer perennials that have fall color, but these, a lot of times, these annual or seasonal mums can be planted in your landscape and they might return for a season or two. There are people who do that all the time. They do look really pretty in a seasonal landscape planted in ground. And some ornamental cabbages and kales. Now these are an annual and they are $6.98. They do like full sun. And a cool thing about these is that the cooler the season gets, the more red and purple they get in the center. So they get a lot more color as the season cools off. And another gorgeous late season blooming perennial is sedums. And there are so many varieties to choose from. The most popular is the Autumn Joy, of course. And then look at this beauty by Proven Winners. So pretty. This is one of my favorites. I actually added it to my garden a couple of seasons ago in a small 4-inch container, like a quart size, and it is doing beautifully. It's more than tripled in size already. The Rock and Grow Coral Jade Sedum. It is a perennial. This one gets to be 16 to 18 inches in height, and it spreads about 28 to 30 inches. Hardy in zones 3 through 9, and it blooms late summer through early fall. The great thing about these Proven Winners tags is that they'll also give you suggestions on pairings. So it says pair with switchgrass, fountain grass, daylily, lavender, catmint, coneflower, and Russian sage. So it takes the guesswork out of pairing plants in your garden for a beautiful and cohesive look. I just love how many bloom clusters they have on them, and they have the most beautiful coral coloring. And the foliage also, I think, is really pretty. Even as they start to emerge in the spring, they have these really thick, waxy leaves, and then you get these clusters of blooms, and then finally the color. And the bees absolutely love these for a late season source of nectar. And one final tip about growing sedum is that they want a lot of sun in a very well draining soil. They do not need a lot of moisture. In fact, if they get too much water, they will sometimes start splitting in the center, splaying on the ground, and some of your stems will start to break off. They will also split in the center if they don't get enough sun. So very little water, tons of sun, they will do really well. And the Rock and Grow Coral Jade Sedum is in a number 3 container for $24.98. And Perovskia, also known as Russian sage, they have such a lovely fragrance. And typically you see these plants grow quite tall, anywhere from 3 to 4 feet in height, which means they need lots of sun in a well-draining soil. If they don't get either, they will sometimes splay in the center and be laying on the ground instead of being nice and upright. But this variety, the Proven Winners Denim and Lace, is a upright, shorter version at 28 to 32 inches in height. And let's see, how wide does it get? Only 34 to 38 inches in width. Hardy in zones 4 through 9 or down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a really pretty plant for dry, hot areas. It gets this purple coloring later in the summer, and it pairs beautifully with so many other perennials. Also a pollinator attractor. Looks very similar to something like a lavender or even a salvia. Has this blue-gray foliage, just a really pretty perennial for a very sunny, dry area of the garden. These are in a number 3 container for $24.98. I'm telling you, friends, the gardening season is not over yet. In fact, fall is one of the best times to plant. The soil is still warm, the temperatures are cooler, which means less stress on your plants. They will have time to establish some roots before the ground freezes and winter sets in, and there are less diseases and pests to contend with, so your plants can grow happily until they go into dormancy. Now, this is another beautiful late summer and fall bloomer. This is the Japanese anemone, and you can see how many bloom buds there are on this plant. This is going to be a pretty shade of pink, as you can see there. Another really great pollinator attracting plant, and it spreads really well. They spread through rhizomes, so they will eventually start spreading horizontally. If you don't want as many of them, you can pull them out very easily and share them with friends. The anemone is a perennial for full sun. They can also take part sun, depending on the variety. This one is called Fantasy Red Riding Hood, and it gets to be 12 to 18 inches in height and needs 18 to 24 inch spacing. So based on its height, I would say this is a front or second row of the border type plant. It's hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit and blooms midsummer through fall. I really love anemones. I have about 4 varieties in my garden now. Gorgeous. And a beautiful dark foliage shrub for late season blooms is the crepe myrtle. Now, the last time we were here a couple of weeks ago, there was a table full of these center stage pink crepe myrtles by proven winners. And this is the last one that I'm able to find on display here. But do remember that you can go on homedepot.com and order one of these if you are interested. It is hardy in USDA growing zone 6B through 10, down to negative 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and it gets to be 6 to 12 feet tall, 8 feet wide. So over time, you can either grow this as a large shrub or limit up and train it into a smaller or medium-sized tree. Look how beautiful those blooms are with this dark foliage. It likes 6+ hours of sun per day, and this is the center stage pink. They also come in center stage coral and center stage red. And this shrub is in number 2 container for $29.98. Friends, this is something I've mentioned to you before, but once in a while at the Box Store Garden Center, you can find these real gems, these specialty conifers that you typically only find at a specialty nursery, but they are here at a much lower price point. Now, I actually planted one of these beauties in my garden just recently. This is the Blue Atlas Cedar Hortsman, and it is a more compact version of the Blue Atlas Cedar. It has this really beautiful steely silvery kind of blue-green color, and these are only $99, which is a steal of a deal. It is beautiful. This one is already staked. It's going to grow in a pyramidal shape, but it's going to be very airy, like you can see through the branches, which I really love. And then they also have this here, which is a weeping white pine. So weeping white pine pendula. Deer resistant evergreen, gets to be 6 to 15 feet in height, but because it has this weeping habit, sometimes they grow a little bit slower and they're easier to control the size. And it needs 10 to 15 foot spacing, hardy down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, so very hardy. And this one here is, let's see how much, $99 for this conifer. Really beautiful pine. And as we head into the winter months, those of us in these cold climates, we need some structure and some things out in the garden to look at over the winter. And what else to add but beautiful conifers and evergreens. So this is the Hortsman, and they have, it looks like 3 of those. And then look at this beauty. I also have 2 of these in my garden. I have mine shaped in a serpentine or S shape, and this is a weeping Blue Atlas Cedar. Now, these do need full sun in order to have this most beautiful steely blue color, but it is a weeping variety. It's going to be very drapey and whimsical, very easy to size control it for your garden, and it is also $99. You can see here, Cedrus atlantica glauca pendula. Pendula means weeping, pendulous. A beauty for $99. The Horseman Blue Atlas Cedar gets to be 8 to 10 feet tall and 5 to 6 feet wide, and it is hardy in USDA growing zone 6 through 9. Home Depot is carrying the Better Boxwood. So if you've been around the gardening world for a little while, you might be familiar with something called boxwood blight. It is a disease that has taken over boxwood hedges all around the world. And so now people are more cautious about planting boxwood. And this variety has been bred to be disease resistant, and boxwood do make great foundation plants. It is one of the few evergreens that can take a shady location, and they're also deer resistant. So they make a great choice for most gardens, especially if you deal with deer. And so this variety, the Better Boxwood, comes in the Heritage, and there is another option as well that it comes in Babylon Beauty. That's what it is right here. You can see that there. So there's the Babylon Beauty, the Heritage, and they grow about the same size, 3 to 4 feet in height, 2 to 3 feet in width, and they are hardy in USDA growing zones 5 through 9. They prefer about 5 to 6 hours of sun, and they will grow in part shade, maybe at a little bit of a slower growth rate, but they can be used in a shadier part of the garden. So it is a medium hedge, taller foundation, or can be used in containers. I actually have a couple of boxwood in containers. I love it, provides color all year round, and you can underplant it with seasonal annuals if you prefer. And these are priced at $16.98 for a number 1 size container of the Better Boxwood. And some golden yellow conifers. This is the Arborvitae Autumn Moon, and it naturally grows in a spherical or round shape. And what's great about that is that not only do they provide evergreen interest, but unlike boxwood that you would need to clip or prune to keep a round shape, this naturally already grows in that shape. 36 to 48 inches in size, and it is evergreen, low maintenance, and it is hardy down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And these are in a number 1 container for $14.98. In order to have this beautiful golden color, you do need to give them full sun. If you put them in too much shade, you will get more of a green coloring, sort of what you see on the undersides of the leaves where they don't get as much sun. And here's another beauty. This is a really interesting evergreen. This is a false holly, so it's not actually a real berry-bearing holly, but it has really interesting foliage. It is variegated, and the new growth on the tips show up in this pink coloring. I actually have one of these planted in my garden, and I absolutely love it. It's been there for a couple of seasons now. It can take part sun. Mine actually is in a part sun location, and thankfully it is deer resistant because it's in an area of my garden that backs up to the woodland, and the deer frequently come through and they have not touched it. It is drought tolerant, and when you see drought tolerant on a tag, that usually means after the plant is established. It's been in your garden for a year or two, it has put out some roots. At that point, it can take a period of drought. While you've newly planted, you do want to make sure that you give it adequate water until it starts developing a root system. It gets to be 42 inches in height, and it needs 3 to 5 foot spacing, hardy down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And it says late summer through fall color. Now, blooms on hollies, typically, just like boxwood, are these very tiny little buttons, barely noticeable, usually white color. You mostly grow these for the structure and the foliage color. And these here are in a number 3 container for $29.98, the Osmanthus gushiki. They have some DeGroote's Spire Arborvitae in stock, and what's interesting about this particular Arborvitae is that the top kind of grows in these different points, and it almost looks like there are multiple trees planted, but it's actually just one. Look at that. It is evergreen, garden showpiece. You can plant one as an individual specimen plant, or you can plant a drift of them. They get to be about 8 feet tall and only 24 to 36 inch in diameter, and they're hardy down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. It says that they can take part sun, and this is a number 3 container for $29.98. And some really pretty fall hanging baskets are these here with Plectranthus in them. Now, they have this really pretty shiny foliage that almost looks fake, and the blooms to me look like penstemon blooms. They're like a little bell-shaped bloom that is great for pollinators at the end of the season. These are in a decorative planter here for $19.98. They're also known as Levandula Mona, but a really pretty end of season hanging basket annual. And some more really colorful annuals. I absolutely love this one. I actually introduced my mom to it, and now she has a huge pot of it outside the garage, and she loves it too. It is the Dragon's Breath Celosia, and it has these really vibrant and beautiful fuchsia colored blooms and dark foliage. Look at that. Such a pretty annual for such vibrant color this late in the season. So they do like full sun. There's the information on the Celosia Dragon's Breath. These containers are in a decorative planter for $22.98, and the color lasts a really long time. I had mine last year through Halloween when we got our first hard frost, and then the plant wilted and it was gone. But I got to enjoy it since about August all the way through October. So really pretty annual. And some beautiful speedwell. Look how gorgeous these purple spike blooms are. Such a really pretty shade of almost indigo. I love them. This is one perennial that I'm yet to add to my garden. I keep trying to find a place for it, and I haven't found one yet. I grow lots of salvia and nepeta, but this one I definitely need for the later summer color. And the pollinators also really love it. Look, there's a little bee right there. So this variety is, let's see, the Speedwell Veronica is all it's listed as. This is a Vigoro container. They do like full sun, deer resistant, and attract hummingbirds. And it looks like the Vigoro #1 containers are $10.98. And it gets to be 12 to 18 inches in height, needs 12 to 15 inch spacing, and it is hardy down to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Blooms mid to late summer. It also comes in a beautiful shade of pink. And I've even seen white Veronica, but this pink one is so pretty. It's like a soft shade of pink. And it is also just listed as Veronica, and it has the same specs as the indigo purple. That's what I'm going to call it. So pretty. And some lavender. Lavender has a really pretty kind of a grayish green coloring. Smells lovely. The foliage and the blooms. You can see that there are still some lavender in bloom here. And this variety is the Grosso. And it is fragrant, great for containers, $10.98. These are great container plants. So if you like to grow perennials in containers with lavender, you just want to make sure that it is a very well-draining container, that your drain holes are not going to get plugged up, and that they're not going to get an excessive amount of water, because lavender does like to grow in a very dry, arid environment in full sun. They are a Mediterranean plant, you know, so that's the conditions that they like to grow in. And here is another beautiful perennial for use in containers, the heuchera or coral bell. It is a foliage plant. They do bloom. They will send up bloom stalks that kind of look like baby's breath at some point throughout the season. You can either leave the blooms up for the pollinators, or you can follow the stem down to the base of the plant and cut them off. But they come in several different colors. This one is a really deep burgundy, and it is called the Carnival Rose Granita. Attractive foliage, attracts butterflies, mounded growth habit. And it gets to be 10 to 12 inches in height, 14 to 16 inch spacing, and blooms early to late spring, hardy down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I have mentioned in videos before that I have a hard time growing heuchera. I love them. They do better for me in planters and in containers versus in the ground. And I recently discussed that with someone who shared a tip with me and said that they like to be planted high, and they also like to kind of lean dry. So let me know if you have any tips for growing heuchera, so that maybe one day I can get them to thrive in the landscape for me and not get a little smaller every year. So attractive foliage, same specs, $10.98, and this variety is called the Carnival Fall Festival. Really pretty foliage on this one. And there are so many beautiful coneflowers or echinacea here at my Home Depot in September. Look at all of these colors. There are whites and pinks and oranges and reds. Stunning. They also have the single petal varieties, as well as some really beautiful, what they call the scoop varieties. They have this poofy bloom at the top with the petals down below. Let's see what variety this is. Look at that. I have a variety called Double Scoop Raspberry. I absolutely love it. Oh, in fact, this is what this is. Double Scoop Raspberry Echinacea. $10.98 for these. They attract butterflies, they're drought tolerant, and they have an upright growth habit. Now, Echinacea does like to grow in a very well-draining soil in full sun. Ooh, this one is a beauty too. It has this dark stem, a really deep fuchsia color. Let's see what this one is called. Sombrero Rosada. Oh, wow. It gets to be, let's see, it blooms late spring through summer, plant in full sun, and it gets to be 18 to 20 inches in height and needs 18 to 22 inch spacing. Hardy in zones 4 through 9. That's a real pretty one. Let's put that back. Oh, they have such cute ones this year with the double scoop and that really deep stem and petal color. And then look at this one with the ruffly petals. This one is called Sunseeker's Sweet Fuchsia. I love the ones with the stacked petals like this. And this variety blooms early summer through fall. It grows 20 to 26 inches in height and needs 10 to 18 inch spacing. Hardy in zones 4 through 9. Very pretty. I love that. So this one, ooh, look at that. Oh, it is a Vigoro container. So even though the pot looks like the Home Depot pot, it is a Vigoro for $10.98. I showed this beauty in a recent video as well. This is an Echinacea, so a cross between an Echinacea and a Rudbeckia, and it's called Summerina. Look at that. It likes full sun. It is a perennial, long blooming, attracts butterflies, upright growth habit, and it gets to be 20 to 24 inches in height and needs 18 to 24 inch spacing. These are stunning. I was first attracted to them because I thought they looked very much like my Rudbeckia that I grow, the what's it called? Sahara Rudbeckia. Oh, it is gorgeous. The Sahara looks very much like this here. It has very pretty ruffly blooms in sunset colors. What is this one called actually? This is another Summerina, just a different colorway. Gorgeous. And they are $14.98 for this number 2 container. And some more Mona Lavender Plectranthus. The one we looked at in the front of the store was more of a magenta color, where these are more of a lavender purple color. Also $19.98 for the hanging basket. And if you grew coleus in your annual containers this summer, don't get ready to toss them once you start doing your fall plantings, because coleus does great as a fall annual. Look at this. Now, to keep your coleus going, once it starts pushing up these blooms like you see here, you want to pinch them off. So go in, pinch off those blooms, and it will create more side shoots and will keep your plant producing foliage longer instead of signaling that it's time to set seed, and then the plant will be less vigorous. But these make a really great container annual through the fall. And here is some of that Hamlin fountain grass that I was talking about. It is a smaller stature type grass. It gets these really beautiful plumes as the season goes on that looks like stalks of wheat. Just really fall looking, isn't it? And I think this pairs beautifully with sedums. I actually have some of the little bunny variety, which is just a little smaller than the Hamlin. And I have it interplanted with some autumn joy sedum, and it looks stunning in the front of a border. So here is the information on the Hamlin. It likes full sun. It is a perennial grass, deer resistant, attractive foliage, and a clumping habit. These are $16.98 for a 1.5 gallon, and they get to be 24 inches in height and need 24 inch spacing. Hardy down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. And the little bunny variety that I grow, I actually purchased here at the Home Depot as well. And that one is somewhere around 18 to 20 inches in height and in width. And look at this beautiful Heliopsis. Heliopsis is also known as false sunflower, and it's a late season bloomer. This variety happens to have dark foliage, and look at that. It has a clumping habit, easy to grow, long blooming. These are also in the Home Depot house brand container, so they are 2 for $15, and it blooms midsummer through fall. Gets to be 16 to 48 inches in height, so these might require some staking based on that height, or you can tuck them between other perennials that might hold them up in the border. And they need 12 to 36 inch spacing, hardy down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. And there are lots of buds on here. Look at that. In fact, even though this has a golden color with what looks to be a little bit of a deeper orange center, it actually coordinates really nicely with this salvia that is right beside it. Look at that. I like to play around with combinations at the garden center, because if they look nice together here, they're going to look beautiful in your garden as well. So here is salvia, which you can see the bees are enjoying. And I have mostly purple salvias in my garden, specifically the May Night variety, but this one is a beautiful pink salvia called Rose Marvel. And it says it attracts butterfly. It has a branching habit. It likes full sun, blooms early to late summer, and it gets to be 10 to 12 inches in height. So it's a fairly short salvia. Needs 12 to 14 inch spacing, and it is hardy down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is nice if this salvia blooms later in the season, because you have the earlier blooming varieties that start in the spring, and then you will have these to finish off the season, which is also lovely. And yet another variety of aster. This one you can see is a nice fluffy, kind of a pinkish purple coloring. And as they open up, they will also get a yellow center. And this one is called the Magic Purple Aster. It likes full sun, 8+ hours of sun per day, and it gets to be 18 to 24 inches in height, but a very pretty variety. I almost prefer asters to mums, although I do like the true perennial mums. I have a variety in my garden called Sheffield, and I absolutely love it. It blooms in October in a really pretty peachy pink coloring. Here's another fun perennial, and this is a low growing one. It is a balloon flower, and what's fun about these is that as the blooms are getting ready to open, they almost look like a balloon that you could just pop. And they're a lot of fun for kids. And this one here is called the Balloon Flower Pop Star Pink. And it's very short in stature. I actually just recently picked this one up to try in my garden. I've had the taller purple varieties in the past, but not this one. This is a great front of the border type plant. So 8 to 10 inches in spacing, 8 inches in height, and blooms early to late summer. Hardy down to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, and has this really soft pink color with a deeper pink veining. And these are in the Home Depot house brand container, so they would be part of the sale at $2 for $15. And if you do buy a single, it does ring up on sale at $7.50. There are lots and lots of annuals in stock: mums, decorative peppers, celotias, the ornamental kales and cabbages. So if you are getting ready to make up some fall displays, there is plenty to choose from here at the Home Depot. Given that it is only the beginning of September, I'm not quite ready to do that in my own garden yet, but I will be sure to share more of these beautiful varieties in the next couple of weeks with you. I just found 3 more varieties of this beautiful Sunseeker type coneflower, or echinacea. Now the Sunseekers means that it has 2 to 3 rows of these petals, making them have a ruffly appearance. So we took a look at the Sunseekers Sweet Fuchsia. They also have the Sunseekers Yellow. See that? Here are some of the yellow varieties. And there is a Sunseeker White. Look at this. They almost look like zinnias, except for the large cone in the center, but very pretty. 18 to 24 inches in height and 10 to 18 inch spacing. So they don't grow as wide as some of the other varieties of coneflowers, but similar in terms of height. The one that generally gets the largest or the tallest is the Echinacea purpurea, which is the native purple coneflower. And an oxeye daisy called Summer Eclipse has this dark foliage and these really fall colored blooms with a golden yellow and a bit of a deep orange center. They're pretty tall, it looks like. And here's the information. They like full sun, Heliopsis, summer eclipse, long blooming, easy to grow, and upright. And these are $10.98 in the Vigoro container. They get to be 24 to 30 inches in height and need 30 to 36 inch spacing. Blooms early to late summer and hardy down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. They actually look very pretty paired with this Russian sage right beside it. This is a Vigoro Russian sage here. Very fragrant Russian sage. I really like the smell of it. And so Pervoskia Russian sage crazy blue and deer resistant attractive foliage, has a shrubby habit. And this is a 2.5 quart for $10.98. And let's see how big this variety gets. 16 to 18 inches in height, 14 to 16 inches in width, and down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is a shorter variety, which would make it easier to tuck into borders. And ornamental onions, also known as alliums. Now these are the clumping variety of alliums, the ones that will bloom in mid to late summer. The bees absolutely love them, and it is part of the onion family, which means that deer and rabbit stay away from them because they don't like the smell. Now if you divide the foliage, you can get a little bit of that onion smell, but in general, it doesn't smell like a strong onion in your garden or anything. So don't be afraid to plant them. They have these beautiful ball-shaped blooms. They almost look like a cake pop. They are so pretty. I have 2 different varieties in my garden, actually 3 different ones now, and I absolutely love them. Super easy to divide. They will get larger and larger, the clump, over time, so you can just dig them up, divide them into several clumps, and you can have a border filled with these after buying just one plant. This one happens to be by Proven Winners. It looks like it can be the Serendipity variety, and it is in a large number 3 container for $24.98. Now there's also the allium that you plant as a bulb in the fall that will bloom for you in the spring. Now it is still too early in most places to plant bulbs. In the fall, when you plant these spring blooming bulbs, you want to make sure that the temperatures are more consistently cool. We're still getting some pretty warm days, which means that these can sprout prematurely. So I would say that if you see a variety in store that you're afraid they'll sell out of, you can pick them up. Just keep them in a paper bag, the shopping bags that you get, closed up in a cool, dark spot so that they don't sprout until you get ready to plant them. Here in my zone 6B, 7A, I usually plant my bulbs at some point between Halloween and like mid-November. So maybe between Halloween and Thanksgiving is usually a good time frame to plant bulbs for me in my zone 6B, 7A. But they're starting to roll in here at the store. They have some crocus and some alliums and some tulips and daffodils. So we will take a look at these in a couple of weeks once the weather starts to cool off a bit more. Lots of options for your fall planters. Look at this, petunias. Did you know that petunias actually like cool seasons? They like the spring and they like the fall. And there's some really pretty fall-esque colors here with these shades of orange and yellow and some whites and even some burgundies. They look really pretty. There are 4-inch Vigoro fall annuals for $4.98. They have some decorative peppers as well as some pentas. And the pentas come in this light pink color, and there is also a magenta color. And some coleus, which also makes a really great fall annual. And these are also $4.98 in a 4-inch Vigoro container. The pansies are back, so we see these in the spring and they come back around in the fall, and the number 6 container is $3.98. Well, as you can see, friends, the gardening season is not over yet. In fact, we're heading into one of the most comfortable times of year to get some gardening done. So I hope that you've enjoyed checking out the early September inventory here at my Home Depot, and I hope that you can find some of these varieties in sales near you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will catch you in the next one.